Hello, guys, and welcome to an episode of Down the Lens podcast with me, Kole, your host. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking to you about why I'm starting the podcast and also where I look to take the podcast in the future. The reason behind this podcast is, I might as well tell you what the podcast is going to be about first. The podcast is predominantly going to be about filmmaking, videography, photography, drones, because if you don't know me, I'm pretty sick with a drone. But also I want to delve into the world of the creative industry and also entrepreneurship. Each of those particular categories I will look to be getting guests on for, potentially experts within the industry. But maybe to start off, while we build the podcast, we'll definitely be getting individuals on that I know from within those industries. So we'll be having conversations regarding how they got into their particular avenue, and also, how they started out and where they look to take their business, how they can help maybe you guys who are interested in starting their own portfolio or actual, self-employed work through one of those different industries. They'll be able to maybe give you some tips and tricks on basically how to get the ball rolling. So yeah, this podcast is going to be about those particular aspects. They're a big interest to me. For the guys that don't know, I started off doing this particular role or this particular job as a videographer approximately 3 years ago after I was made redundant from COVID. It all basically just started out with me purchasing a cheap ass drone and then just flying it in the local area where I would just then start uploading the videos that I made on a jailbroke Adobe Premiere program. Yeah, I'd make those videos on Premiere, very, very basic edits, I must say. And then I'd be uploading them to social platforms, whether it be Facebook or Instagram. And that's basically how I started. Before that, I did kind of, do the whole travel video kind of stuff, just using my iPhone. So when I used to go away with, friends, family, and the missus, I used to take the iPhone and, especially if I was going to nice locations, I'd take the extra time to pull out my phone and, maybe, take some shots that I was really interested in, depend on the location I was at. And then on the way back on the plane, I'd sit there on my phone with iMovie and just basically edit for however long the flight was, just on my phone. And that's what really, gained the traction for me and the interest in regards to, potentially turn this into a full-time job. So like I said, from doing that and then obviously purchasing the drone during lockdown, I posted the content online where it gained a lot of traction just from people not being able to get out of their house. They were interested in seeing obviously the area, and the area that we live in is rather beautiful. But from that, I had, DMs and Facebook messages asking me if I could shoot certain content. It wasn't technically professional at the time. It was more of, small businesses looking to promote, obviously, their business within the local area, and they wanted particularly drone shots, of their business. I remember doing one very weird place. I say weird place, very weird vehicle for this kind of environment. There was a gentleman, lovely gentleman, not far from where I grew up, who he was a traveller, put it that way, not like a gypsy traveller, like the hippie travellers that go to Thailand or Vietnam on a spiritual holiday. Great gentleman, but he basically had his own tuk-tuk and was doing tours around the countryside with picnics, and he required some drone footage of the tuk-tuk driving through the lanes with the mountains in the background. And I was that individual that done that for him. Obviously, I earned money from it. It wasn't a large amount of money, but those are the kind of jobs that were coming through. A lot of construction jobs, potentially. A lot of my friends or people that saw the opportunity to use drones within construction. Before and afters, using drone footage and videos of construction. That was another good source of income. So yeah, it come through in drips and drabs when I first started out, and that's why, I enjoyed the drone stuff purely for just, the local area that I lived in. But I saw a business opportunity where, I started to delve into that a bit more. But my first camera work that I'd done was for a good friend of mine who I hope to have on this podcast. Well, I will be having him on the podcast. If he doesn't come on, then I'll smash his head in. It was Mr. Schaefer Bates. He produced a lot of YouTube content and sketches and stuff like that. But he was, getting a bit fed up of doing his own filming and just was wanting to focus mainly on the voice acting side of things. But me being one of his good friends, I stepped in and kind of started to learn the ropes using his equipment. And the first time I set my hands on a I say professional camera, it's more than above average kind of camera, it's above average. But yeah, from doing the YouTube channels and the sketches for him and filming a lot of content, I basically got to grips with how to use a camera, which was a long process, let me tell you. But from that, I managed to book my first ever client, who was a lovely lady who actually I found out owned a big ass brand called Jojo Mamba, which is still going, which is like a maternity kind of baby retail brand. But anyhow, that's got nothing to do with the story. But she owned a lovely retreat yoga place up in the countryside, not far from me, and she required basically a business portfolio video to promote her yoga retreat that come with the accommodation, etc. And no jokes, I went there with a Sony, a Sony 6400 for those tech guys out there, and I decided to do an interview with a shotgun mic approximately 10 foot away from this particular client. And it's safe to say the audio that I got back once I listened to it over was absolutely awful. And it was the first time taking a camera out of a controlled environment, out of a studio environment where I was shooting with, the sunlight penetrating through the, penetrating. It's a very strong word to use. But yeah, where I was shooting rooms and people with, natural sunlight, and I did not have a clue how to operate this particular camera. The exposure was completely blown. The shutter speed was all over the shop. But, that was the first time I learnt how to, put what I had already previously learned into practice. The final content wasn't the best, but the client paid, and it was the first paid job that I ever done, which really motivated me to, push on with what I was doing, and then obviously try and find more clients through promoting my own work. So basically what I'm saying is, if you guys are beginners to potentially the creative industry world and you're looking to get into it, by all means, this podcast is for you. As I'm speaking to you now, I was in the same shoes as you guys. But also, if you are already in the industry, whether it be filmmaking, photography, we are going to be getting guests on that have, we're in that line of work, and I really want to delve into their stories and obviously how they started out, kind of go into, we can easily go into their tech and what kind of tech they use to capture their content. But I also want to hear stories of, how they gain new clients, what they kind of think of polishing a project, whether that be, editing photos or, editing video. But there's also many other aspects of filmmaking and entrepreneurship and creative industry individuals that I'd love to get on this podcast, particularly illustrators. I do believe that the industry that, I'm delving into, you need entrepreneurship skills. Not that I have many, but, it takes a certain kind of human that wants to, go away from the 9 till 5 and kind of put those extra hours in to build something that you made, from the ground up. So those kind of individuals, 100% love to get on this particular podcast where, we could pull back the layers and kind of really delve into how they basically started and where they are now. But I also want to go into other aspects that I don't have an absolute clue about, especially TV and broadcasting. I don't have a Scooby. I've been on one shoot before, and I remember at the end of the shoot, because I was being the drone pilot, they said, "Can you bring me your riffs?" I was like, "What are you on about, mate? Riffs?" So yeah, we need your riffs for the end of the day so we can store them all on the hard drive. As soon as it's hard drive, I said, "Do you mean SD cards?" He's like, yeah, riffs. I was like, what's with all this technological vocabulary that you guys are using? But yeah, TV broadcasting is a whole nother kettle of fish, and also just general filmmaking, cinematography. I've never been on a film set, and I think we all appreciate a good film. We all love to sit down on the weekend or, Netflix and chill and enjoy a good film, but we don't see what goes on behind the lens per se. And I really want to delve into the different jobs that might take a movie to be produced and actually hit the box office. So whether that be like a director or a producer or a first AC, even down to like the wardrobe manager who picks out the outfits for a particular scene or a particular film. So there are definitely many avenues this podcast could potentially go down, especially with guests and their interaction with this podcast. If you've just got a broad enjoyment for filmmaking, videography, and all that malarkey, then this podcast would definitely be for you. Like I said, I am hosting this particular episode. However, moving forward, I will be looking to get guests on very regularly. There's only so much you can say by yourself on a podcast unless you got a script. So each episode, I'm hoping moving forward, we'll have guests on from different industries within the realm of, should we just call it, creative industries? But yeah, and then obviously we can delve into the realm of entrepreneurship. So that aspect will kind of be all entrepreneurship, but obviously it'd be mainly my interest. But I just like to see and hear people's stories of how they become successful. It doesn't even matter if, I know a real successful bloke who lives on the other side of Wales, who owns a laundry company. Laundry, we all have to do it. I'm not interested in laundry, but I'm interested in how he saw a gap in the market and basically, at the age of 19, made himself his first 100 grand and then developed that company. I am always been interested in entrepreneurship, love Dragon's Den, and I just love to delve into people's minds and how they, saw a gap in the market, come up with a concept, and now they're actually delivering on the product or, the service that they're providing as an entrepreneur. So that's a massive aspect I'd like to get onto this podcast. The majority of you guys are listening, will be listening for, filmmaking, videography and that kind of thing. But like I said earlier on, there will be an aspect of entrepreneurship within starting up your own business. Even if you are a wedding photographer, you're filming commercials, you would have had to take that initial step, whether it just be setting up an Instagram profile that's separate from your personal one and, doing feeders out. You're going to have to take that initiative to get that ball rolling. And, theoretically, that comes into entrepreneurship. And there's so many successful people out there now in today's world, making money online. And, creative, you got TikTokers these days, influencers, as they like to call themselves. They're all making hundreds of thousands, through the creative industry, and technically using cameras that obviously I'm using now and we use day to day, whether that be your iPhone or a professional camera. But these individuals, what I'm trying to say, are creative and, have technically, entrepreneurship skills. And it'd just be cool to sit down and just kind of pick their brain and how they went around, making the decisions they did to get where they are. But yeah, that's pretty much the different aspects that I want to delve into within this podcast. I hope that I've covered everything. I think I've covered everything. Yeah, thanks. For you guys, if you can, please jump over to Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube to obviously watch and listen to this episode. I will be chucking reels up mainly on your TikTok and your Instagram. And then obviously the full episode I'll put up on YouTube as well. So if you can watch it visually, even though I haven't been very, what's the word where you move all your hands and all? Articulate? No, that's when you use words. Yeah, basically, visually, I've just been staring down the camera. But if you are listening on audio, please jump over to social channels where you can, absorb more content. And thanks for listening to the Down the Lens podcast with me. I hope you have a shit one. See you in a bit.